Hello, friends, and welcome back. I'm Andy, and we're going to be doing something a little different today. When I originally recorded this session here, I lost my original audio. So I'm just going to kind of play it back and do my commentary while I'm watching what I already did. Not sure how well that'll work out, but we're just going to go into it. This is, notice that the name of the title of the chapter was 7X. That's because it's what's called a Gaiden chapter. Gaiden chapters are sort of side missions. They're usually optional. And they often have little extra story elements, or finer details that aren't necessary to the main plot of the game, but kind of help fill in the gaps and just make the story a little more complete. Also, oftentimes, Gaiden chapters will have rewards, or they'll have access to items that you can't talk. They'll have access to items that you might not be able to get otherwise. Now, this particular Gaiden chapter, there's nothing too special going on in terms of story. It's really only here to introduce the idea of the Gaiden chapters, as well as sort of show off this group known as the Black Fang. The Black Fang, I think I mentioned before, are a group of assassins who work out of the neighboring kingdom of Bern. And they will factor into the story once we start in on the main campaign, after we get out of Lynn's little story here. And all that's really happening here is the siblings that we met in the last chapter, Ninian and Nils, asked us to come and track down the Black Fang so we can get back the heirloom that Ninian had stolen from her. Now you might see there that we have an enemy thief on the map. As far as I'm aware, the first enemy thief that we see in the game. Enemy thieves are interesting because they have a different AI than other enemy units. Most enemies will pretty much attack anyone who gets into their range, and if they have multiple units in range to attack, then they'll usually prioritize weaker ones or enemies that they have a weapon advantage against. Thieves, in contrast, will not attack anybody. Their main goal is to steal any treasure that is on the map and then just make a break for the exit. The only time they will Well, no, they will never actually attack directly. They will, of course, counterattack if you attack them, but they will never initiate an attack against you. Now, if you're wondering why I sent Florina after the archer, after I talked about flyers taking bonus damage from bows, I actually did a couple practice runs on this chapter before I started recording, and I figured out pretty easily that Florina would be able to take on that archer without taking too much damage. At least not more than what Sarah could heal. So up until this point, everything has been going pretty much exactly how it had been during my practice. That, however, is about to change. And yeah, here it is. This right here is not my proudest moment. Now, in my practice, either one or both of these soldiers would miss Lynn, giving her more than enough health to survive an attack from this mage. However, this happens. Now, the reason that ended up happening like that is actually due to the way that the game figures percentages, the RNG, or random number generator. Now, what actually happens is that the game has a list of numbers running in the background, all ranging from 1 to 99. And anytime that the game needs to figure out a percentage like hit rate, critical hit rate, or even the unit's stat level ups, it will draw from the next number in that list. And if that number is lower than the percentage needed, then it will read as positive, and you'll get the hit or the crit or the stat level up, whichever it happens to be. The interesting thing about that is the list of numbers never changes. Every time you start up a new game, it is the same list of numbers. So, if you were to start up Fire Emblem Blazing Sword and play the game making exactly the same moves that I make, your game would in theory turn out exactly how mine has to this point. You know, same stats, same level ups, same hits, all of that. However, there's one little caveat to that, and this is what messed me up and got me that game over. When you're moving your units, and it draws that little arrow on the map to show where you want your unit to go, anytime that you exceed your unit's set number of moves within that arrow, within that movement space, or otherwise force the game to redraw the arrow instead of just moving it to the next spot. If there's more than one way that the arrow can be drawn and still be within the minimum number of spaces to end up on the spot that your cursor's at, it will draw from the list of random numbers and use that to determine how to draw the arrow. So, at the beginning of my original attempt here, when I was moving one of my cavaliers, I did just that. I forced the game to redraw the arrow, and that shifted all of my RNG down one spot on that list. And that's what ended up causing all three of those enemies to hit Lynn instead of just one or two of them. So it's... Oh, excuse me. I actually find it really fascinating how the game does that. Like, it's not... I don't think any game is entirely random. You know, there's always some function that determines the RNG, but the way these games in particular, at least the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games, the way they do it with that static list of numbers in the background, I find really interesting. Because like I said, if you play the exact same way as somebody else, you will get the exact same results. Or if you restart a chapter and make the exact same moves, you'll get the exact same results. And now right here, because I didn't make that extra move on my cavalier, Lynn was actually able to dodge that soldier. I also held her back. I didn't go... That might have had something to do with it as well. I don't know. But yeah, this time I actually managed to get both of them without getting hit. In my practice runs, I would always take at least one hit from them. So yeah, that's one big thing in these games. If you find that you're stuck and doing things a certain way just isn't working out for you, changing up just one or two movements can make a huge difference. You know, whether that's moving someone in a different way, or attacking a different enemy, or just not attacking at all. Little things like that can drastically change the overall outcome just due to the way that the game's programming is. And actually, there are people who do speed runs of these games. I mentioned, I mentioned before that I picked up one or two of the tricks I used in earlier chapters from watching speed runs. And there's also people who do what they call LTC runs, or low turn count runs, which sounds like it would be the same thing, but it is a little different, because with the low turn count, you're not going for the lowest time. You're just going for the least amount of turns. Now, naturally, there will be some overlap there, and they use a lot of the same tricks, but speedrunners often tend to exploit the programming a little more. Like they'll use a lot of minor glitches and whatnot to get through faster. Whereas I don't know, maybe LTC players do that as well. I haven't seen as much of that to know, but from what I have seen, they don't do it as much. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. But with LTCs and the speedruns, a lot of times what they'll end up doing is using what I talked about with moving the arrow to manipulate the RNG to get it exactly where they want it in order to get through either in the fastest way or in the least number of turns. Now, of course, these are people who know the game backwards and forwards. I could never do that, because I just don't have the patience to learn the game like that. But there we go. That was the first guide and chapter, and I stupidly decided to move on to Chapter 8 without properly looking at it over, and you'll see that that's gonna mess me up. From now on, I probably should really just do one chapter at a time and make sure that I have an opportunity to at least do a few turns on a test run before I jump into recording, because what's about to happen here is just embarrassing. I mean, I will fully admit that I am not great at these games. I love them, but I'm not great at these games. I'm terrible with forming strategy. But I'm about to do something really, really stupid that I really should have known better. Once I finish moving items around anyway. Now, at some point in here, I think it might have been when I was just hovering over Florina. I know I had to stop and get at one of the cats, so... Oh, this is probably it. This long pause here. Yeah, this long pause was just me going after one of the cats because they were getting into something they shouldn't have. That took me longer than I remembered. Alright, here we go. And yeah, watching this again is not going to be very pretty. So yeah, this map has a ballista. Ballistas are basically long-range bows. So they can be very dangerous to flyers, much like any other archer, but even worse because they can shoot from, I think, 10 spaces away. And yeah, this is the dumb move that I was talking about. I don't know why, but for some reason I was thinking that Lyn could make it over that peak and attack the archer. That is not the case. So, yeah, again, I really should have just quit at the end of that chapter, and here I am figuring out that I made a stupid mistake. And yeah, I think that's where we're ending it. I'm just about to close out, so I will sign off here. Once again, friends, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. And I will see you guys next time. Thanks for coming, guys.